Husband, father, minister, author, orator, Nobel laureate, disciplined disciple of peace, love, and nonviolence, and martyr for freedom and justice. Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was among the most prophetic and impactful leaders this nation has ever witnessed. More than George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, who were tainted by their chauvinism and conspicuous possession of slaves, Dr. King provided a sound, unbiased, and elevated blueprint for the redemption of this nation. And yet his vision for a more just and less hypocritical America remains a distant dream, and in too many instances and arenas has been replaced by a terrifying nightmare of broad and deceptive proportions. Few people understand the deeply held spiritual convictions that guided and sustained Dr. King. And while he was fully anchored in the Christian stream of righteousness and love, he fully accepted the equal validity of other faiths and worked as a brother with clergy from the Jewish, Buddhist, Muslim, and Hindu faiths. In fact, more than any other, it was a Hindu by the name of Mahatma Gandhi whose nonviolent strategies of non-cooperation and passive resistance Dr. King adapted for his freedom and service work here in the United States. Dr. King spoke truth to power, an eternal truth taught by Jesus Christ himself that included and yet went beyond the groundless constructs of race as he addressed the more fundamental issues of poverty, war, social division, and ideological conditioning. But in response, power put an end to his life and to his Christ-inspired appeal for basic human rights, equal justice under law, and a more civilized sharing of wealth, power, and all-around accessibility. Today, Dr. King speaks to us like never before, urging us to become true human beings and to bring an end to the growing contradictions that continue to plague this nation, its people, and indeed the entire world. Here now are 18 quotes that flow from his writings, his sermons, and public talks. References include a 1957 Christmas sermon, his Nobel Peace Prize acceptance speech, his letter from a Birmingham jail, his book, Strength to Love, his Time to Break Silence speech on the Vietnam War, and his final talks in Memphis, Tennessee. Power without love is reckless and abusive, and love without power is sentimental and anemic. Power at its best is love, implementing the demands of justice. And justice at its best is power, correcting everything that stands against love. Our scientific power has outrun our spiritual power. We have guided missiles and misguided men. Now is the time to make real the promise of democracy and transform our pending national elegy into a creative psalm of brotherhood. Now is the time to lift our national policy from the quicksand of racial injustice to the solid rock of human dignity. Cowardice asks the question, is it safe? Expediency asks the question, is it politic? Vanity asks the question, is it popular? But conscience asks the question, is it right? And there comes a time when one must take a position that is neither safe, nor politic, nor popular, but one must take it because it is right. Human progress never rolls in on the wheels of inevitability. It comes through the tireless efforts of men willing to be co-workers with God. And without this hard work, time itself becomes an ally of the forces of social stagnation. We must use time creatively in the knowledge that the time is always ripe to do right. More and more, I feel that the people of ill will have used time much more effectively than have the people of goodwill. We will have to repent in this generation, not merely for the hateful words and actions of the bad people, but for the appalling silence of the good people. A time comes when silence is betrayal. Our world is a neighborhood. We must learn to live together as brothers and sisters, or we will all perish as fools. For I submit, nothing will be done until people put their bodies and souls into this. So when Jesus says, love your enemies, he is setting forth a profound and ultimately inescapable admonition. Have we not come to such an impasse in the modern world that we love our enemies or else? The chain reaction of evil, hate, begetting hate, wars producing more wars, must be broken, or else we shall be plunged into the dark abyss of annihilation. When I speak of love, I am not speaking of some sentimental and weak response. I am speaking of that force which all of the great religions have seen as the supreme unifying principle of life. Love is somehow the key that unlocks the door, which leads to ultimate reality. This Hindu, Muslim, Christian, Jewish, Buddhist belief about ultimate reality is summed up in the first epistle of St. John. Let us love one another. I hope the church as a whole will meet the challenge of this decisive hour. But even if the church does not come to the aid of justice, I have no despair about the future. I come by here to say that America too is going to hell if we don't use her vast resources of wealth to end poverty and make it possible for all of God's children to have the basic necessities of life. She too will go to hell. A nation that continues year after year to spend more money on military defense than on programs of social uplift is approaching a spiritual death. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. Hate multiplies hate. Violence multiplies violence. And toughness multiplies toughness in a descending spiral of destruction. The chain reaction of evil, hate begetting hate, wars producing more wars must be broken, or we shall be plunged into the dark abyss of annihilation. One who condones evils is just as guilty as the one who perpetuates them. The ultimate weakness of violence is that it is a descending spiral begetting the very thing it seeks to destroy. Instead of diminishing evil, it multiplies it. Through violence, you murder the hater, but you do not murder hate. In fact, violence merely increases hate. Returning violence for violence multiplies violence, adding deeper darkness to a night already devoid of stars. Nonviolence is the answer to the crucial political and moral questions of our time. The need for man to overcome oppression and violence without resorting to oppression and violence. Man must evolve for all human conflicts a method which rejects revenge, aggression, and retaliation. The foundation of such a method is love. And finally, I have decided to stick with love. Hate is too great a burden to bear.